Alright, I got everything set up. Got all my things in position. I may have to get up and move camera angles as I'm filming, just because I want you guys to get the best angles, and I may have to adjust things, and maybe I'll edit it out, maybe I won't. Alright, so let's get this going. So, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to set it in position, line it up, make sure everything's lined up where I want it. So that looks good right about there. Make sure everything's in this right spot. Then I'm going to take my Sharpie, fine point Sharpie. Fine point Sharpie will fit through this hole. So I'll lock it down with my fingers, hold it in place, try not to move it. And I'll stick the Sharpie through one hole. I'll pick one hole and I'll stick it through the hole of the silver and mark the titanium cuff underneath. Okay, so I put a little red dot right there. Okay. Just one. Only mark one. Do not mark 2 or 3 or 4. Mark 1. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick it on a bracelet mandrel. I have a bracelet mandrel here, and I'm going to take my my center punch, my regular center punch. It's got a point on it. I'm going to stick it right on that dot that I marked, exactly on the dot, and give it a punch. What that did is that put a little dimple where I need to drill. That way I don't get any drift. I know exactly where I need to drill that hole. All right. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to my drill press. I'm going to slip it over, line up the drill bit to the dimple. While it's not on, have it off. Line up the mark right to where the dimple is. Once I think I'm right on the dimple, I'll let go of the lever, turn on the drill press, and drill through. When you're drilling titanium or anything, you want the drill bit to do the work. You want the drill bit to cut. You don't want to force it through too fast. You want to slowly ease it through as it's cutting. If you force it through, you're going to burn up your drill bit too fast, and then it'll put a burr on the inside, the backside and the inside of the cuff. So let the drill bit do the work. Let it do the cutting. All right. So let me get some rivets out. All right, so this first way that I'm going to rivet is going to be with my Stinger riveting system. I have some pre-made rivets here. What these rivets are is they are very tiny little rivet heads. So what I make them with is 16 gauge round wire, and then what I do, I personally use, I have a pulse arc welder where it shoots a pulse of current, electricity, a high energy pulse of electricity right at the ball, and it melts a perfect little ball. Back in the days before I had that pulse arc welder, I would use a torch. I would use a Smith little torch. I'd get a Smith little torch with like a number 3 tip, and I would turn that flame up super hot, and give it a lot of oxygen, and bring that flame so it was just like a pinpoint needle flame. A lot of heat coming through it, but a really tight small flame. I would hold the wire with tweezers, and I would just melt a little ball. Boop, just like quickly just melt the tiniest little ball head you could possibly get on it. But you do want a little ball, a tiny little ball. All right. So that's how I make them. I actually make these and sell these rivets. I haven't had time to make them lately, but when I make more riveting systems, I actually make rivets, packs of rivets, and I sell the rivets. So again, in this class, we're using 16 gauge round wire. Okay. People ask, can I use other gauges, like a 14 gauge? You might be able to get with 14 gauge on using my Stinger riveting system, but I'm not really sure. I only use 16 gauge. I wouldn't go any more than 14. I think it might work on 14, but I make it for 16 gauge rivets. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the piece and we're going to line it up. So we're going to line up the 2 holes: the hole that was on the silver plate that I drilled through, and then the hole that I drilled into the titanium. You're going to take the rivet head. It's got a small ball head on it, right? So you want to come inside the bracelet. You want to come with the side first that doesn't have the ball on it, and push it through the hole of the titanium. So we've slipped it through. Okay. Let's bring this camera back down. All right, so I've put the rivet through the cuff, starting from the inside. You come inside with it, and now there's the ball head is right here on the inside. If you can't get the ball through, you can't get the ball through. You can't. So the rivet has one side as a ball, and one side is just a cut piece of wire. So the ball head, it's made so that it won't go through the hole. So you have to stick the rivet in, the point first, the side without the ball on it. Okay, so it's through the cuff. The ball's right here on the inside. I'm going to hold the ball. Now I'm going to slip the top piece through the rivet. Okay, so there it is. It's through both pieces. All right. See that? I kind of slipped that piece over the rivet. There's the rivet head right there. And the ball head is on the inside of the cuff. The ball head is right here. Okay, so let's go over to my riveting system. Let's move the cameras around a little bit. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to take the piece, I want to get so now this is not a regular center punch. This is a center punch that I reconfigure, and I put a small dimple or divot on it. So I took one of the other ones, I cut it off, I reversed it. This one has a pointy tip. This one is the opposite. This one has a divot, the opposite way. Okay, so what I'm going to do is get this ready. Maybe give it a couple snaps. Make sure it's actually working. Sometimes they don't snap correctly. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a pair of flush cutters ready. I'm going to take, here's the other part of my Stinger riveting system right here. See, this also has a divot on it right here, small divot. So the ball of the rivet will actually sit into that divot right about there. Actually, let's do it this way. So put the ball in the divot, push down, make sure the rivet is all the way up and seated all the way up, okay? All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flush cutters and I'm going to cut off some of the rivet, the excess rivet here. The amount that I leave up is about 2 millimeters, the thickness of 2 credit cards, okay? So then what I'm going to do is take a file. I'm going to lightly file the top of that head where I cut it. The flush cutters leave a small line across the top of it, like it cuts and then it breaks. So there's like a little ridge on it. So I just take a file and I slightly file that ridge off so that the top of that rivet head is totally smooth and flat. Okay? So then what I do is I take my Stinger riveting system, give it a snap, the ball, making sure that the ball head of the rivet is resting in that divot on this fixture. Then I stick the head of this on top of it. Make sure I'm straight up and down. You don't want to be at an angle. If I'm at an angle at all and I go to pop this, it could bend the rivet head over. So you want to make sure it's straight up and down. Give it a pop, take a look at it, make sure it's still straight up and down. It is. If it starts to curve over, you want to adjust the riveter. It's still straight though, so I'm going to give it a couple more pops. One more. There it is. It's made a perfectly domed rivet head. Okay. Now the inside of it is also perfectly domed. There's no sharp edges. There's no cleanup on this rivet inside here. It's perfectly smooth. I don't have to go in there and clean it up. I don't have to buff it. It's smooth to the touch. This one up here, if you pump it, so there's a few things that could happen. If you snap it too many times, this thing it's a divot, so there's a ring around it. If you punch it too many times, you'll end up leaving a ring around the rivet head. It's okay. It's a look. I don't like to see the ring. Sometimes if I pump too many times and I get a ring, then I'll just ring all of them. I'll put rings around all of them. So that's the first one, okay? If that rivet would have started bending over, say it was bending over this way, I would just turn my riveting system slightly at an angle and punch it, and it would stand the rivet back up. All right, so that's good for the first one. All right, so let's go back and do the next one. So now that one's riveted, I don't need to actually mark through the hole anymore because this thing's not coming off. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to line everything up so it's all in its correct position. Then I'm just going to slip it back onto the drill press. So I'm just going to make sure everything's lined up, nice and square. Then I'm not going to mark it and punch it anymore. Okay, I'm just going to hold it in place, slip it onto the wooden dowel. I'm going to line up the drill bit, make sure it goes down right into the hole, line everything up. Right, there it is right there. So I'm just going to hold everything snug, turn it on, and slowly drill through the hole. Now that's perfectly lined up. Okay, it's all perfectly lined up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another rivet. Again, come from the inside, push it through the hole, and get it through both holes. There it is. It went through both holes. There's the second rivet. You always want to come from the inside of the cuff out, and then your head of your rivet, your pre-made ball head, it will be on the inside of the cuff. It's crucial that you go that way with it, because that's the way you want to use the riveting fixture. And then the inside head always makes the smoothest. It's always the smoothest when you have the ball head on the inside, so you don't have to have any cleanup, no sharp edges on the inside of the cuff. Okay, so then do the same thing. Take the rivet. The ball head's on the inside, stick it on the divot on the fixture, push down on it, make sure that the rivet is all the way up and seated correctly. Cut off 2 millimeters. File the top of the head a little bit. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Careful not to file anything else. Take your punch, give it a quick snap on the table, again, make sure it snaps. Stick it on the head, give it one pop. Take a look at it, make sure it's still standing up straight. At this point, if I had cut the rivet too long, too tall, one pump could start bending it over a little bit. It would bend over. So if it was bending over a little bit, say the rivet's going this way, I would also have my riveter going in that same direction. I'd follow it. I'd pop it, and it would stand it back up. So it's still standing straight up and down. So I'll do another pop, take a look, looks good. Give it another pop. Give it a feel. One more pop. There it is. Now that sucker is riveted in place. Okay. See, this is the beauty of this fixture. I can get a cuff on it and just rivet it. And I don't have to do anything to the inside of this rivet head, because I've already started it as a rivet head, a ball. This little fixture that I put it on will actually, as I'm snapping it, it's hammering it, it's making that ball into like more of a low domed rivet head. And I don't have to do anything to the inside of this. There's nothing. It's smooth. It's not going to scratch you. There is a small, slight low dome to it, but it's not going to come through the hole, and it's not going to scratch you. Okay. So that's why I invented it, was for cuffs. It could be used on pendants, flat surfaces. It's a little trickier. I have something else that I'm working on that'll you'll be able to use this, but not the fixture. It more like a flat table, or like a puck, a steel puck with a divot in it, so that everything kind of lays flat. Flatter surface is a little bit trickier. I've noticed when I've tried pendants. Sometimes, like, I'll go to snap it, and like the whole thing will slip or something. But it does work. You can use it on pendants if you practice, to make sure you hold everything flat and level, and don't start kicking it one way or the other. All right, so let me get set up. Let me get set up. Move the cameras around, and I'll show you. If you don't want to buy this system, if you don't want to use my Stinger riveting system, if you just want to use the traditional way to rivet with a hammer, I'll show you how I used to go about it. I'll show you how some people. I'll try. I have 2 more holes, so I'll try one way, the way I used to do it, and then I'll show you the way that I did it after I got a little bit of brains, and then I just showed you the way when I turned into a genius. So this way is super fast, super easy. I'll do 30, 40 rivets on a cuff, and I can get them done super fast. Once you have a few rivets in place, locked in place, say at this point I had 10 more or a dozen more holes I had to drill. At this point, it's locked in place, so I can literally just start drilling holes. Boom, 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 drilling all the holes, drill that dozen holes, stick a rivet in, cut it off, snap, snap, snap. Grab another rivet in, stick it to the hole, cut it off, snap, 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 and just keep going, I wouldn't have to go back to the drill press once it's locked in place. But let me get the camera set up, and then I'll show you a couple different ways of how I used to do it, and then how I learned how to do it, and made it a little bit easier. And then I just showed you the way that's the easiest way. All right, so let me set these cameras up.